Alrighty, so this is actually one of the most fun UC PIQs to work with. Whenever I'm working with my students and clients, I think this PIQ actually made for some of the most interesting topics. Usually the topics here are going to be super cool because they usually translate off into other essay prompts like the Common App main essay and like the big supplements for top schools, stuff like that, right? And so, roughly speaking, if you can answer UC PIQ 5, you can practically answer a lot of other prompts. Now, how do I know this, right? Well, glad you asked, right? Uh, I'm Bagpipe. I've been doing college consulting and essay advising for 7 years now, and I've been helping students get accepted into T25 schools such as UC Berkeley, LA, Cornell, Dartmouth, UPenn, U Chicago, MIT, and Harvard, and so on and so forth, right? Uh, Now, with that out of the way, I'm just going to be covering UC PIQ 5 directly, okay? So, describe the most significant challenge you have faced and the steps you have taken to overcome this challenge. How has this challenge affected your academic achievement? Okay, so we can all kind of agree that everyone's gone through struggle no matter how minuscule. For some of you guys, it's going to be physical. For others, it's mental. For a good number of you guys, it's probably going to be a mixture of both. But regardless, I've got a few points on how to best approach this prompt. So, yeah, here goes. Number one, weave in multiple themes and ideas. Okay, so I'm going to start this off with a weird explanation, but I hope this actually illustrates it pretty well, right? So here goes. You guys know how in AP Lit classes, or really any kind of English classes that require deep analysis, your teacher's going to be asking you to analyze and search for crucial themes and motifs embedded in like a couple of pages for homework, right? it's it's like the pages are like 5 pages on like how snow fell on St. Petersburg, right? It's like, I jest about this, right? But like, you actually discover that within those pages, there's often a lot of important themes and ideas in the text. And you have to look for these in your own essay in the same way that you do for English classes, right? Look through the document thoroughly, right? If you actually really pour through all of the details that you're writing and you really try to analyze them, you might actually notice that there's a lot of really cool, important themes and motifs that are actually embedded in your story that you didn't actually capitalize on. All right, so I'm going to take computer science as an example, all right? One of the things that beginners in comp sci go through is that they're trying to figure out what the hell is actually wrong with their code, right? Uh, they start to realize that troubleshooting actually involves a lot more than just being smart, right? It's actually a lot more about like pain tolerance and patience too, right? Um, but what's so cool about this is that when you get started on an essay, right, about learning to get your program to do what you tell it to do, you actually make it evolve into one about emotional intelligence too, right? It's not just about being smart. It's about the emotional maturity of not getting angry and learning to troubleshoot with a level head, right? So, with just a little bit of thinking, this essay can cover far more than just the surface, right? You could be covering intelligence, you could be covering creativity. You're probably going to be covering adapting to unexpected errors. That's a pretty common one in engineering and in business, right? Patience, right? uh, Perhaps even overcoming pride, right? It's a softer skill, right? When it comes to having to acquiesce to the idea that you're just not as smart as you thought you were, right? And honestly, just with a little bit of brainstorming and deconstructing, you can actually draw out a lot of important themes and ideas that are embedded in your topic that you might have otherwise missed when you were writing. All right, got it? Great. So that brings us to number two. Remember that challenges are not unidimensional. All right, this is actually a pretty easy way to improve your PAQ 5, honestly. If you miss this one, what are you doing, right? Practically all challenges have multiple dimensions to them, right? There's the challenge as such, which is like just on the surface, and there's the challenge that's within the challenge, right? There's everything that's circling around it, right? You can think of these as sort of like semi challenges or problems that orbit the main issue. They kind of branch off, right? So here's an example, all right? Let's say you're someone who's unable to work with people in a group project, right? Because everyone you work with is catty and seems to isolate you, right? Well, maybe you don't care about popularity contests, your teammates certainly do, right? And not only that, you're kind of stuck with them, right? This is actually a common problem across the board, right? Where productivity actually gets slowed down tremendously because of nonsensical, catty problems, right? And, it might seem like something that's only reserved for silly high school or middle school behavior, right? But you'd be surprised, right? That this actually happens in the real adult world, right? So notice how this problem actually evolves from a simple one to a complex one that demands multiple hats, right? You're not just handling the work required to complete the task. You're also trying to navigate a very complex social situation where the wrong words can mean catastrophic failure. Additionally, you're going to be navigating the emotional elements that's keeping you cool, right, in an otherwise hostile work environment, right? In other words, the truly difficult challenges are not always unidimensional, right? In fact, they're often a node in a web of connections with multiple consequences. And navigating that complex web means having to conjure creative solutions. Okay, so that actually brings us to a really cool thing, which is our next point, right? If problems are not unidimensional, it obviously follows that the solutions are often creative and unconventional, right? So, number three, right? Look deeper into what helped you overcome your challenge, right? Okay, so this is essentially an inexorable follow through of number two, but it's important, so listen up, right? As we mentioned before, interesting problems often have multiple dimensions to them. So, if you really look deep and you analyze how you overcame your obstacles and you analyze your solutions, you may notice that it required you having to think outside the box, right? I'm going to take the difficult teammates example again, right? Let's just go back to that. What would be the solution to dealing with nasty coworkers who aren't willing to work alongside or help you due to cattiness? Well, instead of just like feeding you guys the answer immediately, right? I'm actually going to let you guys think about it for a sec, right? Really stretch your minds here to conjure a creative solution, right? How do you handle completing a school project with catty team members, knowing that they won't collaborate or compromise with you? I'll give you guys a little bit to just think of a creative answer, right? Try to think outside the box for a bit to see what would be impressive to admissions officers, right? So yeah, feel free to pause this video. Okay, got it? Here's an example of what could be said. We all know that saying I just did everything for them and did their share of work too isn't really going to cut it, right? It happens, right? In the real world it does, but it also means being taken advantage of, right? Plus, that's your general go-to answer, and we're not really going for basic here, right? No sad beige answers here, right? But here's a cool one, okay? There's a cool thing called reflective listening, which is a technique developed by Carl Rogers. Long story short, it's a technique where you reflect what other people are saying to you in your own words, right? For instance, if you get passive-aggressive responses or comments every time you try to engage with a toxic group that you need to engage with due to a group project deadline, you can actually reflect what they're saying to get them to engage with their own faulty premises rather than the onus being unfairly pushed onto you. It's essentially just repeating what they say in your own words, right? Now, hold on a minute, right? Isn't this just fundamental conflict resolution, right? Kind of, right? But we've actually carved out a very interesting opportunity here, right? We actually found a way to weave in fundamentals of psychology and what would be an overcoming obstacles kind of problem, right? This is actually the perfect opportunity for an interdisciplinary approach to problems and demonstrating how you can use heuristics from multiple fields in your everyday life. In other words, your knowledge isn't just knowing for the sake of it. You can actually apply it in person. Okay, so there's going to be a few more things to cover, so be patient, all right? Lots of stuff to discuss with PIQ 5. I really tried to keep this as short as I can because there's a lot of stuff to say about this one, okay? So number 4, show, don't tell for the right reasons. Okay, so we kind of covered this in UC PIQ 2, right? You could check that video out in the playlist. Anyway, long story short, you're often told to always show, don't tell. The problem is that showing is often best used for things that actually matter, right? Such as the main point. Imagery for extraneous details often serve no purpose, and sometimes they even confuse your admissions officers, right? Too much stimuli is going to make it hard for them to even remember what's going on, right? There's a time and place to show and tell, right? It's a mix. In the case of UC PIQ 2 in that video, right, I used your first internship as a business major as an example, right? Even if you're really excited about your internship, right? There are going to be some elements of your story that should be delegated to telling, as it grounds your story in something easy to understand. The fancy flowery stuff can like don't use it for, the intro where you delegate 250 words only to the sight of concrete and glass in a firm's postmodern architecture, right? Or, like don't talk about like the smell of the receptionist's hair, like like dude, right? You could still dedicate some words to setting the scene, right? But like save the purple prose for the good stuff, right? Don't underestimate the importance of telling instead of showing, right? When it comes to making things clearer for your readers, right? I think this show don't tell problem actually becomes a big issue for people who want to share major stories, right? This show don't tell imbalance usually occurs because people believe that every single detail of their very crucial experience is going to be absolutely vital, right? Like they can't really let go of any of the details because they feel like everything's important, right? So they have to hold on to every minuscule description, right? And realistically, that part of writing is less about being a good writer. It's actually just a little bit more about being less greedy, right? Like you can't keep every single detail that happened in your story, right? Learn to let go of those elements of your story. It's fine if the admissions officers don't see it. Often, less is going to be more. Okay, so final point, all right? Number 5. Circle back to how this shaped who you are and how it impacted your academics. Okay, I'm going to make an important point here, okay? So you're going to need to let go of control. Why? It's because some of you guys are so anxious about explaining the academic impact that you feel anything short of just absolute oppression is going to get you rejected, right? Here's the thing, okay? You don't want to let your anxiety about acceptance rates, especially in comparison to other people who might have had it worse than you, get in the way of telling the truth, right? You don't want to force your hand into making up reasons why your academic performance might be poor. It's okay to have reasons why your performance is low, right? That's for sure. But trying to lie or manipulate the truth is going to show through your writing. Trust me, some people will get away with it, right? But most people aren't as good at lying as they expect. It really does bleed through the writing. If it only left a slight dent on your performance, like, yeah, sure, all right, right? Even if it left a positive impact on your performance, that's kind of fine too, right? Now, of course, you can look at your academic impact from multiple perspectives, right? Just like in the previous bits of advice. It might not be unidimensional, right? For instance, you may have noticed that overcoming your problems with ADHD have actually helped you not just improve your grades, but also improve your relationship with your teachers, right? That may have had cascading effects like improving your sociability with peers, making you a really great community builder, right? By the way, controversial college admissions opinion incoming, but you can in fact talk about ADHD. It's not against the rules, right? While I've had my own students who wrote about ADHD accepted into top schools, that's seriously a video for another time because we definitely can't cover all of that all in today, okay? So, all right. Now, while I can't cover why talking about ADHD and other learning conditions in college essays is probably okay in this video, I can at least cover one little bonus tip, okay? So, bonus. Be careful with who you listen to regarding what you can and cannot say. All right, this is less of a how to write well tip and more of a watch what you intake about college admissions advice kind of tip. I say this because I've had my own clients tell me about other college admissions consultants that they've talked to, and dude, some of you guys are going to listen to people who essentially jump to conclusions about every topic. Like, they'll just say, oh, it's bad, right? And just reject literally everything. Even when the topics were actually pretty good, right? It's like, bro, I'm not saying all college consultants are bad, but man, some of these people on like TikTok and Reddit's Chance Me sub, right? The applying to college sub, right? They'll just say that every single topic is bad. Every single one is cringe, right? It's like they have this idea that like the admissions officers are like out for blood or something, right? And it's like, dude, like you're gonna be fine, right? Most topics are generally okay. Sure, some of them are gonna be better than others, right? Some of them might have a slight increase in performance, right? But ultimately, there's very few of them that are actually really cringe or absolutely terrible, as most of them make them out to be, right? Most of them are just like pretty average, right? Unless you take yourself way too seriously or something, like, like a goober, right? Well, that's going to be about it for this video. If you guys need college admissions essay services or just general consulting services, feel free to reach out through the email in the description box below. Realistically, I wanted to have this video a little bit longer because there were quite a lot of things in point number 2 through 4 that I wanted to talk about more in depth, but we really just don't have time for all of that in this one video. I try to keep these videos as short as I can, so if you guys happen to have any questions regarding how to write PIQ 5, or you guys are confused about any of the points, just feel free to send a message below. You could either email me, you could just write it in the comments, whatever floats your boat, all right? Until then, that's about it. See ya.